Annuary. I've been practicing that all afternoon, and it's basically the opposite. It's a nationwide campaign. It was founded a few years ago to encourage support for the beer industry. There's going to be events happening all over the country in support of it, including a very special walking tour around some of the West Midlands' most historic pubs. And I've got my man Kevin here with me, Kevin Thomas, who is the man behind all this. Good afternoon, Kevin.
Hi, Foxy. Thanks very much for having me on.
Oh, no. From Monday, I'm only covering the show this week, and Adam told me which guests we had on when we first met up, and he told me about you, and I was like, I'm very excited. Do you know, I was promised by my producer Adam that you might bring some beer in, but obviously you haven't.
Unfortunately, no. It's a bit early for me.
Oh, is it? Okay. Now, it's halfway through January now, and how has it gone so far?
Well, the whole thing with Triannuary is that for the big pubs, it's not really a problem. They do their business, but it's lots of the small independents that this time of year, well, all the year really, is struggling. There's lots of new independent breweries and independent bars. But it's great. I mean, people have been really interested in it. The walk that I've done has been sold out, so I'm very pleased with that. And it's just nice to be able to kind of, share what I know with other people. That's the best thing for me.
Oh, how does it work?
Well, what we do, we start, it's a walking tour of the historic pubs of Birmingham. So it's very subjective. It's the pubs that I like and the pubs that I think have got great histories. So we start at the Rose Villa Tavern in the Jewellery Quarter, which is a great pub. That pub's not that old, about 1920 that one was built. But there were previous pubs there, and there were things called beer houses that used to be there.
Okay.
1700s, there was a massive gin epidemic. People were going mad for gin. There were lots of alcoholics. So the government introduced a new law that allowed small houses to produce their own beer.
Okay.
With the idea of trying to head off this kind of epidemic of alcoholism.
Right.
And where the Rose Villa Tavern is, that was where one of the beer houses originally was. So it dates back. It dates back a long way. Obviously, the Jewellery Quarter, it was bombed. There's been clearances there. It's changed. But the Rose Villa Tavern itself is an absolutely amazing pub. If you go in, there are beautiful stained glass windows. There's exquisite tile work in there.
Yeah.
1920s, and there are great stories. It used to be what's called a copper's pub. So it used to be where the gangs of Birmingham hung out.
The Peaky Blinders.
Well, I don't know about the Peaky Blinders.
That sort of thing.
That sort of thing. There were lots of gangs in Birmingham. And what they do, the gangs would hang out there, so the police would go and hang out there as well.
Undercover,
chat to the people in there. So it's got these great histories and great stories about it. And the fact that just the interior is absolutely incredible in there. I'd recommend anybody just to go in to have a look at the interior of it.
You then move on to the next pub.
We do. We walk down Newhall Street and we go to the Queen's Arms. Now, again, the Queen's Arms, it's opposite the Assay Office in Birmingham. And it's got Art Nouveau tiling and lettering above it. Now, you don't get a lot of Art Nouveau in Birmingham at all.
Right.
But the other great thing about it is not only is it a fantastic pub, Old Mitchell and Butler's pub, good Birmingham brand, but it's about 5 doors away from the telephone exchange, which was the nuclear bunker for Birmingham.
Wow.
So I've just got this great idea that's where you'd have your last pint.
Yes, yeah. Let's just get half in before it kicks off.
So the siren goes off. First thing you've got to do is go and have a pint.
Get a swift half. Okay, yeah.
And if you go into the telephone exchange on Newhall Street, it's an Art Deco building, and you walk into the reception there, and it's almost like walking into a cinema reception. It's absolutely fantastic.
I'm not sure if I've been in the Queen's Arms.
Queen's Arms, at the moment it's red.
Okay.
It's been repainted recently.
Yeah.
And the interior isn't really the most important thing, with the structure of the building. The outside of it has actually got a terracotta relief, Mitchell and Butler's signage above it, an enormous signage in this Art Nouveau lettering. And it's quite an old pub in Birmingham, the Colmore Estate, which owned all of that land there. They sold off the land to start development in Birmingham, and that was one of the places. I mean, it's been renovated and it's been changed over the years, but on that site, that pub has been there for an awful long while. It's
Do you know, before we move on, because we've got three more pubs, should I say, to go through. We should explain your background and why you got involved in doing this.
Okay, well, I'm a photographer, and I run walking tours. And what I did, all of the walking tours are based around exhibitions that I've had, or one or two of them that I'm working on at the moment. And I had this idea that I do all this research for the exhibition. The project's over, it all goes in a drawer, and I move on to the next project. So I started doing the walking tours to try and share that information, and I enjoy people. I enjoy being with people and talking to people. So it's a great way of sharing the things that I've learned. I'm not a professional researcher. I'm not a professional historian. It's just what actually I find out that I think is interesting, and hope other people.
And it just proves how much you've frequented some of these places as well, Kevin.
A little too often.
You've spent a lot of time in these boozers. So the next on the tour, this is my favourite pub in Birmingham, and I know I share the same opinion as you.
It takes you, when you walk into the old joint stock.
Oh, I love it in there.
It just takes your breath away.
So I'm not from Birmingham. I'm from Hull. When my wife and I first moved to Birmingham, we moved to Kings Norton. We got the train into town. It was the first pub that someone suggested that we went to for a Sunday lunch. We walked in. Now, am I correct in thinking the old joint stock is an old bank?
It is an old bank, but before it was a bank, it was a library. It was a private library in Birmingham.
Okay.
Hence, there's a theatre there as well. And the theatre was the lecture theatre for the library. It's really strange when you tell people that there were private libraries in Birmingham. But of course, there's still the Birmingham and Midlands Institute on Margaret Street.
Right.
That's still a private library now. And that also has a lecture theatre in there.
Didn't know that.
Well, again, well worth visiting. Absolutely amazing place. It's next to the art school.
Okay.
And the outside of it is fantastic. But getting back to the old joint stock.
Our favourite, Kev, our favourite. Go on.
You just walk in, and it's so spacious, and it's so exquisitely done. It was built as a library. The bank took it over, and then eventually Lloyds Bank took that bank over. So it's had this history, and there are strong boxes in there. And somebody told me the other day, it was when it was Lloyds Bank, because it was such an enormous Lloyds Bank, it was where they kept all of the spare keys to all of the Lloyds Bank branches around Britain.
What a story. That's amazing. I love stuff like that.
It's just amazing to think that all of those keys were just there, locked up somewhere.
All right, so the next pub on the tour?
The next pub on the tour is the Trocadero. The Trocadero, for anybody that hasn't seen it, it's the kind of pub that if you were travelling abroad on an aeroplane, it would be in the in-flight magazine. The outside of it is glazed tiles. It's an Italian style. I mean, people just walk by it, and it amazes me because it is such an amazing building. Started out its life as a subscription fire station for Birmingham.
Wow.
That would have been, and the idea of a subscription fire station would be a bit like the AA.
Yeah.
That you'd pay a yearly fee. You had a plaque on the outside of your building. If there was a fire, they would put it out.
Oh my word, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Kevin.
If there wasn't a plaque, my guess is they'd still put it out, but they'd charge you a fortune for doing that. They could negotiate
It's like
on the
they were
spot.
living in the United States at the time.
I know. I mean, there were a number of... that's how fire stations actually started. Most of them were subscription fire stations.
Didn't know that.
But it gets better with the Trocadero because it turned into a place called after that it turned into a place called the Bodega Wine Bar.
Okay.
The landlord who owned it, this is roundabout turn of the 1800s, got into an argument with the two of the bar staff who were brothers.
Yeah.
It got very, very heated. He was an ex-military man, had a gun behind the counter. One of the bartenders pulled the gun and shot him dead.
Wow.
It's absolutely amazing.
That happened in there?
That happened in there. It carries on. There's other great things about that pub. It's one of the first gay pubs in Birmingham.
Right, okay.
And when you read about it, it says in those days it was dripping with nicotine, and it was kind of a bit, not that pleasant. But even now, you look at the outside and you just want to go in and have a look because it looks so fantastic.
Well, look, Kev, we're going to play a song, get some news and travel. There's one more pub. Let's tease our listener over the news and travel so they can find out the final pub on the route. But if you wouldn't mind, if you can just sit there for 5 minutes, I'll play a song. All right.